The NBA season just started this week, but I already see 5 shocking trades that could happen during the deadline this year, and today I will be making some very crazy trade predictions that are almost guaranteed to miss. Just kidding, I think some will hit, as I am predicting them, but yeah, let's get right into it. Trade number 1 involves the Magic and the Hawks, and no, it is not a Trae Young deal, rather a Bogdanovic trade. Bogdanovic's role already seems to be minimal with the Hawks this year, and based on events last year, his anger may already be brewing. Watching him play for Serbia in the Olympics and watching him play throughout his career, one thing that is not deniable is his elite three-point shooting ability. With his availability growing, the package it would take for the Magic to acquire him is definitely shrinking. Orlando has a rising superstar in Paolo Banchero who does his best work inside the arc and needs the floor spacing in order to be as effective as we know he can be. Bringing in a prolific shooter like Bogdanovic will address a major issue that the Magic need to solve at an affordable price, making it a no-brainer. If the Magic don't address their shooting woes, they are in for the same fate as last year, and ideally, they should look to take a step forward. So I predict Bogdanovic will be in Orlando Magic by the trade deadline. Trade 2 is the first blockbuster I believe could go down, and it is a deal that sends Julius Randle out of Minnesota by the deadline. It is no secret that the play style of Randle could have a disastrous impact on the Timberwolves team as he struggles to play without the ball in his hand, and defensively, Randle has many lapses and is not great on the perimeter, making him a negative on that end. With him having 1 year remaining on his contract, finding a trade partner once his recently traded restrictions vanish will be easier, and a team destined for a bottom 3 finish in their conference could pursue him to get money off their books fast. There are a list of teams that could take on Randle for 1 year, as they are in a rebuild, and those teams are the Wizards, Blazers, and Nets. Unless the Nets and Wolves are willing to come together on a deal that sends Cam Johnson and Dorian Finney-Smith to Minnesota for Randle, I doubt a deal is made with the two sides. The Wizards could look at a swap of Randle for Kuzma, and I, for one, would like that deal a lot. But if the opportunity presents itself, I believe that a deal with the Blazers that brings Jerami Grant to Minnesota while shipping out Randle is the trade we will see at the deadline if Randle is not working out in Minnesota. The issues with Randle are his inability to defend consistently, play off the ball, and provide floor spacing around Anthony Edwards. Jerami Grant in a competitive environment is a good defensive player, but more importantly, he is a 40% three-point shooter with size that allows him to play the 4. If this isn't the perfect match for the Timberwolves, I do not know who is. Portland is not trying to keep Grant for another 4 years, so if you are able to facilitate a third team in this deal to either 1, give Portland assets from sending Randle elsewhere immediately, 2, give them Randle to flip in a separate deal, or 3, give them the flexibility of taking a max contract off their books after this season, will be massive. In all Jerami Grant mock trades, the Blazers get a return of players that they have no use for, or a max player that will stay on the books long term. Julius Randle will be gone after this season, and for that reason, I believe that a prediction of Grant to Minnesota is the clear fix to any Julius Randle problems, and it already seems like that could be happening. So yeah, prediction number 2. Jerami Grant to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Trade 3 is almost certainly a trade based on how good the Hornets seem they can be, as this deal would send Walker Kessler to Charlotte. Many teams in the NBA right now have huge deficiencies at the 5 spot, yet no assets to trade for a true center. The Hornets are in a different situation as they have draft capital and flexibility to go out and land a center like Kessler. The Hornets have 2 decent interior options, but realistically, they need to solidify the interior defense, and adding a shot blocker like Kessler will give them an extra push defensively. Optimism is high on the Hornets with Brandon Miller's capabilities and LaMelo Ball's stardom when healthy, combined with all the other high-level NBA players they have around them. If they add a center, it will make a world of difference and may actually allow them to compete for a play-in and even a playoff spot. Not saying they are a team that is competitive yet, but they could look to make a push given the stardom they have shaping up right now. Trade number 4 is not a set-in-stone deal, but I predict that Michael Porter Jr. will no longer be a Denver Nugget after this year's deadline. We could sit here and say that the Nuggets are going to be fine with the current roster they have because they got Jokic, or we can be honest and realistic and say they are not good enough at this moment in time. Talent alone will carry them to the playoffs, but talent does not beat good teams in the current age of the NBA, and paying a player that cannot defend and struggles to create his own shot $35 million a year is just not viable at this moment in time. However, Michael Porter Jr. is young and still has another level he can reach in terms of his overall ceiling, so younger teams could look to trade for him despite the awful contract. The Nuggets must replace MPJ with multiple players that can defend and shoot to make up for the losses of KCP and Bruce Brown, as well as MPJ if he is traded. Bad teams that have expendable players that fit the mold are the Nets, Blazers, and away the Bulls, potentially the Raptors, and maybe the Clippers by the deadline. The two best deals for the Nuggets, though, would easily come from the Nets and Blazers, as the Blazers have the ability to give Jerami Grant and Matisse Thybulle to the Denver Nuggets, and the Nets could give Denver Cam Johnson and Dorian Finney-Smith. Contractually, this would actually work. The only problem is how much the Nets and Blazers value MPJ, as they could not view him as enough for the players they are giving up. Either way, there could be some other deal there for the Nuggets, but one thing is clear. If they make a trade, it will almost certainly include Michael Porter Jr., and the Nuggets are too smart to not do anything. Right? And the final trade is without a doubt going to be a Jimmy Butler trade, as there has been so much speculation of one throughout the duration of the Heat's offseason, but given the Heat's lack of change and underwhelming roster, a Jimmy Butler trade may come to fruition. If you never saw Jimmy play a postseason game, you would think he is a borderline all-star caliber player and in no way, shape, or form would have as much of a commanding market as he does. But year after year, Jimmy Butler shows us why he is known as Playoff Jimmy, and knowledge of it explains why his value is so high. Many teams' dream scenario would involve landing Jimmy, as competitive teams look to take a huge step towards the playoffs and try to make a run. My favorite destination for Jimmy would be the Warriors, but the team I will be predicting Jimmy to go to is the Houston Rockets, as many would agree the Rockets are desperate and are aspiring to add a superstar level wing, as they've been in the market for Kevin Durant, Brandon Ingram, Jimmy Butler, and just any wings that could really bring them over the top. The Rockets just missed out on a play-in spot last year, and they believe adding one wing would allow a deep run in the loaded Western Conference because realistically, on paper, this team has no chance as is, and adding Jimmy Butler and with the assets they have, I think the possibility of this is actually very likely, especially if the Heat keep playing as bad as they played against the Magic opening night. But yeah, that's all I got for y'all. The Heat do need to figure it out. We'll talk about that more in this week's episode of In Case You Missed It. That will drop Monday at 3, the weekly recap on my channel that drops every Monday. But yeah, I hope y'all enjoyed. If you want to see a recap of the entire 2024 NBA offseason, click on the video on the screen. Y'all stay safe. Have a good one. Bye.